Joining us now via telephone to discuss this, former Congressman Pete Hoekstra. Pete, we're keeping count on this. 5 times in 3 days, the FBI investigating commercial airliners in the United States threatened on Twitter. Terror by tweet, is that the new favored form of grounding aircraft?
Well, it may be, JD. What you find is that, one group has been successful, or one individual. Others may be doing copycats, or it may have been, 5 threats by a single individual. It's against the law. We're going to have to, develop the forensics. The FBI is going to have to develop the forensic techniques to find and identify these folks. And as soon as we do, prosecute them to the full extent of the law. Teach them a lesson.
But what if they can't trace where these tweets are coming from, or what if they're beyond our borders and our reach?
No, that's the problem that you find with cyber. At that point in time, businesses are going to have to make some kind of a calculation as to whether they believe the threat is a genuine threat, or whether they believe that it's just a hoax. And it's going to involve the bottom line. It's going to be disruptive to the economy. It's going to be disruptive to these airlines, to the passengers on the airlines, and it's going to be expensive.
Pete, in the wake of 9/11, we recall the federal Sky Marshal program ramping up. Do you envision, whether it's within the FBI or some sort of special cyber task force, in its own way every bit as important as a Sky Marshal program?
Oh, I think absolutely you're going to see that develop, JD. This whole cyber space, we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg as to how people may use it, how they will be created to disrupt the economy, how to disrupt businesses that they may disagree with, and how they can use it to either inflict real damage, physical damage, or how they may use it to make a financial reward. It is totally an unexplored space. We are ill-equipped to deal with it from a law enforcement perspective, and so until we actually get a grip on this, you're going to see more of this rather than less.
But do you think we need to get help from our allies, that this isn't something that the U.S. can handle alone?
Absolutely. This is going to be an international. I think, as you brought up earlier, it's hard to locate exactly where these threats are coming from. We're going to have to work with our allies. But the bottom line is, cyber is also going to be a tool that is going to be used extensively by our enemies: Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, and it's going to be hard to identify even from these countries when it's coming from these countries. And then the interesting thing is going to be, how are we going to respond as a country? Are we going to view, depending on the exact nature of the threat, are we going to view it as potentially an act of war?
Mindful of this, Pete, there is always a concern, and we heard it when we were voting on the Patriot Act, liberty versus security. The internet, by and large, certainly in terms of taxation on the national scene, we recall voting for bills to keep enterprise on the internet tax-free. But there's obviously a concern about rights and responsibilities. And there's likewise a concern that if government gets too much control of the internet, it could not be a desirable thing from a personal liberty standpoint. How do we balance rights and responsibilities in the information age, in the cyber age?
Well, the first thing is that we do have a Constitution which guarantees the rights of our citizens here in the United States. For those who aren't protected by our laws and our Constitution, all the gloves are off. We use every tool possible. But we're guided by the Constitution, and that's fairly clear as to what, in legal precedent, as to exactly what law enforcement can and cannot do in terms of intercepting communication. There may be some updates that will have to be put in place because of the very nature of cyber. But the legal framework is there, and much of what we've done since 9/11, I would argue almost everything we've done since 9/11, has not infringed or has not moved that line at all from protecting the rights of American citizens. We've been very, very good at doing that. I know that some of my former colleagues on the Hill, they may dispute that, but I would argue very, very forcefully we've not moved that line at all. American rights and privileges have been protected.
So, Pete, if you were advising airliners, what would you be suggesting they do?
Well, I think at this point in time, I would advise them that they have to take these threats very, very seriously. I'm not a lawyer, but my guess is that if they discounted a threat and the plane took off and the threat was real and, heaven forbid that a plane actually came down, the liability to the airline would be significantly increased because they disregarded a threat. I think they're doing the right thing. They're inspecting the planes. They're clearing the planes before they're allowing the planes to take off. Passenger safety has to be paramount.
About a minute remains, Pete. Need to switch subjects with you. We are hearing talk that the Army has developed a case and quite possibly a desertion charge against Bo Bergdahl. When you reconcile that with the swap of 5 terrorists, I guess the question is, how can you reconcile that?
Well, let's see exactly what happens with Bergdahl. It's very, very hard to reconcile. Obviously the first intent was to get Bergdahl back and get him, away from the Taliban. We've done that. I think they've done the right thing, then investigated all of the circumstances surrounding his disappearance from his post. And if they found that it really was desertion, he did it on his own free will, they're doing the right thing. We really needed to be able to talk to him before we could make a determination as to exactly what happened.
Fair enough. On those two very different and yet related subjects, Pete Hoekstra, former chairman of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, we thank you for checking in by telephone.
Always good to be with you. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Yesterday right here and today via telephone. When we come back, Steve Beeman will join us to talk about the EU and Greece. Has Greece really greased the skids for the end of the European Union? All of that following this Newsmax Now update.